both of us have come into this relationship as two women who, let's keep it real, we have entirely different body experiences.
Kids are cruel, I would get called, chicken bone legs.
Oh no. I would say I cannot remember a time in my life when I was not obsessed in some way with my weight and my body.
All I remember in our cupboard was boxes of Slim Fast products. I remember nibbling one of those Slim Fast chocolate bars, and it was awful. It was like eating cardboard with a thin layer of plasticky cheap chocolate. And I was like, why is she eating this stuff? It's horrible.
I remember that taste. There was one particular day when I came with my cheese sandwich and sat outside the club where everyone was eating. The coach was just making jokes about, oh, are you on another diet? And so he said, yeah, all you need to do is eat 30 lemons a day. You can go and get one now. And if you do that, you'll start losing weight. So there's young me with all the peers sitting round.
Super impressionable.
I go and collect lemons from this tree and start eating them there and then. And as I'm eating them, and they're so sour, so of course you're sitting there like this as a kid, like your mouth is, that back of the jaw sourness that you get, and
I can feel it now.
You can feel it just thinking about it. You know that taste. And they're all there trying to look normal while I'm chewing through probably my third lemon.
How?
And then suddenly I'm noticing the shoulders jiggling and going up and down. And it's because him and all the young impressionable boys are laughing at me, knowing he's absolutely having me on.
As a slim person, you often can't talk about the issues that you face as a slim person, because people just kind of look at you and they're like, what have you got to worry about?
In Southern Africa, although my mum had this weird relationship, I think in the culture, it was almost like you're rich when you're bigger bodied because it means you can afford food, you have everything, you have resources.
That is the difference in beauty standards across cultures.
Roots and rigor, rigor and flow. Roots and rigor, rigor and flow. Roots and rigor, rigor and flow. Rigor and flow.
One. Welcome to Rigor and Flow with me, Aiwan.
And me, Tamanda, the show where business meets love.
And culture meets critique.
Yes, indeed.
What do we have today?
Okay, we are straying this week into, I think, for me, it feels like tricky territory.
Okay.
Because we are talking about bodies, food, and talking about that stuff in a culture that is obsessed with how we look, how we appear, policing people's bodies, women's bodies in particular, though it definitely happens to men too, because there's this ideal aesthetic that people are supposed to live up to is really hard.
Well, I mean, we talked about the Chad in our episode when we were talking about incels.
Yes.
What episode was that actually?
It was on raising a boy.
That was it.
Yeah.
It was how women play into the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And we talked about the incels and how part of their beef is that there are these guys that they refer to as Chad who have the ideal body.
Yeah.
Muscly.
Yeah, this like alpha male aesthetic that, men are supposed to live up to. And that is for sure a thing. And there are also the aesthetics that femmes and women are supposed to live up to, right? As well, the Stacey, which we talked about in that episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is such a vexed issue. And I know for sure this is going to be a really sensitive topic for some people that I know listen.
Yes.
And I think it might be quite a challenging one for us, but I feel like...
We got to tread carefully. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, no, we do. But also, I think it's so important for us because both of us have come into this relationship as two women who, let's keep it real, we have entirely different body experiences, body types. Yes. And so it's actually been like quite a minefield in some ways to talk about and navigate.
Yeah. And yet, though we have two very different body types, structures, we've still been on the receiving end, weirdly, of societies and our culture and communities, I guess, what would you call it?
Dialogues, discourse about bodies,
Yeah.
But also painful, really
also-
painful,
yes.
abusive responses to our extremely different bodies.
Exactly. So it's almost like it's almost like there is no right or wrong way, because it really does depend on the culture, on the community.
Yeah, you can't win. Like, on the surface of it, I look at you and I'm like, oh my God, you have this like incredible body. I wish I had that body. And I wouldn't necessarily think you've been on the end of the most difficult parts of that. I mean, probably if I thought about it enough, I would, because as African people, I think, like you say, culture plays a part, but we'll get into all that. I mean, one of the reasons I think this is such an important topic right now is I feel like on social media, I've seen several shifts. Maybe they're not shifts so much as like really mixed messages. Like, I've seen amazing stuff that's come out of the body positivity movement and influencers who, I mean, have been really quite vocal about disrupting some of the narratives that I grew up with that I found to be very unhelpful for my self-esteem.
So give me some examples.
Oh, I mean, people like Megan Jane Crabb, who we know.
She's brilliant.
She's unbelievable. She's done important work around body positivity. And I
Yes.
really like Megan's way of showing up online.
Yes.
So that would be one person. Then there's people like Miss Jessamine, who's in a bigger body and who does stuff around yoga. And I just think that kind of representation has been so important and so needed in our culture. But there's been certain kinds of shifts in the last year or two that I'm seeing. So if people have gone, oh, you know, we no longer want to talk about body positivity. We need to talk about body neutrality. We can get into the ins and outs of that, but
What's body neutrality?
I'll come back to that later once we've spoken. But
so
yeah,
confused.
it's like, this is what I mean. There's these shifts and people are trying to reckon with this thing. And then so many people who have been like the icons of body positivity, someone like Lizzo, for example.
Oh yeah, the singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the singer. The artist.
Yeah, exactly, the artist. She's gone on this very, very public journey of essentially focusing on her health, and she's been on TikTok and she's been talking about it. So I feel like it's something that's happening, and it's also happening at a time where things like Ozempic and other kinds of solutions to support health and weight loss, which have different responses, are also happening. Like just today, I think it's been announced that Weight Watchers has filed for bankruptcy. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Which is, think about how massive I don't know how it was in your childhood, but I feel like the whole backdrop to my childhood was shaped by Weight Watchers. You remember that?
Yeah, of course I remember Weight Watchers. They were an iconic brand. I mean, even TV series came out about Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
What's his name? Car karaoke.
Carpool Karaoke, James Corden?
James Corden, he did a series and it was about, I think it was called Fat. I need to find that. And it was basically Fat Friends, I think it was called.
Oh, I'd never even heard of this.
And it was about Weight Watchers, essentially.
What was the angle?
The angle was that they're a group of fat friends, and that is the name of the show, so please don't come for me. And they're part of a slimming club. And it's actually set in Leeds.
No way.
Yeah. And they're part of a slimming club, and with a focus on the various ways that their weight has impacted them. And that slimming club, I think, is loosely based on Weight Watchers.
Oh, I see.
Because there were these clubs that were where women would go and they would get their meal guides, and it was based on Weight Watchers, and then they would get weighed every week to see how much they'd lost.
Yeah.
So that show is literally based on that.
That's super interesting. I actually didn't even know about it. But I mean, put it that way, it's been so big that at least for me, it's like the backdrop. I remember absorbing that stuff as a teen, and it was mums going off to weigh themselves every second. This was supposed to be one of the better ones because you didn't have to do excessive calorie counting, if I remember.
Exactly.
It had a different system.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is they have filed for bankruptcy and they're in an aggressive process of restructuring their debt because of drugs like Ozempic, which they just cannot compete with in the market. So, and I think 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years ago, if you had said there was something like Ozempic, people would have been like, this is wild. This is inevitably going to be harmful, whether it is or it isn't. Or there would have been such a kind of a stigma and a backlash at the height of a certain kind of fat positivity narrative, I think. And people probably would have been shamed for wanting to do that because it would have harked back to something about weight loss pills and the constant slim fast and all the things we grew up with as teenagers in a culture that made us very restrictive in a lot of cases about what we ate. So it's just interesting. I feel like there's all sorts of shifting happening and all sorts of very different narratives that we're all being exposed to that are quite hard to make sense of.
So today's episode is really exploring our journeys, the impact of this culture around, you know,
diets, weight loss, ideal bodies,
body scripts.
Yeah.
All of the things that taught us how to relate to our bodies and what the world thinks of our bodies as we move through space and time. Not to get too philosophical.
Wow, space and time. Yo, I wasn't expecting that as the upfront.
All right, let's get into it.
So talking about this wild social landscape, what has been your experience of navigating the world in we should talk about what your body type is, because not everybody can see you.
That is very true.
Maybe you should describe your body type first in your own words.
Okay, so what I'll say is on my dad's side, we're all pretty, I was going to say skinny. I'll just say we're slim build people.
Yeah.
And quite tall.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize how tall I am until they meet me, because very often people see me on like a video call and they can see like the top of my head and maybe up to my mid torso.
Yeah.
And then they meet me and they're having to look up at me if they're not tall.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, wow, you're really tall.
Yeah, including men. Like I always remember my brother first meeting you and just being like, I've seen quite a lot of men actually meet you and just be like, I don't know what to do with you. Like, am I supposed to bro you? Am I supposed to? It is so funny because I think it cuts to something like around masculinity in bodies as well.
Oh, absolutely. Because obviously on top of being tall, I'm also quite a tomboy. So quite mask presenting as well. Always have been a tomboy.
And you've got an athletic build.
Because I go to the gym. And that's another thing with me is that if I don't go to the gym, then I end up just being quite, it's just skinny is the only way to explain it. It's not, there's no tone, there's no, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So for me, the gym is actually a really important part of me sort of shaping my body in a way that doesn't feel too like gaunt or too skinny, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And also, I will say, not because I need to say this, but I do think you also have a very healthy component to going to the gym, which is you actually genuinely love fitness in a way that I do not.
Yeah,
like you've always been athletic.
Yeah, I grew up playing loads of sports, despite my mum's many attempts to get me not to play sports. I was just obsessed with sports. I loved hanging out with the boys. I loved play fighting. I loved running as fast as I possibly could.
You were a super sprinter, weren't you?
I loved sprinting. I was really fast.
Your event and what were your times?
It was 100 meters and 200 meters and obviously the relays. And I think my fastest time in high school was 12 point something, like 12.3 seconds or something like that.
What age?
I must have been about 14, 15.
That's ridiculous.
So I was really, really fast.
Yeah.
So I loved running. I loved all sport. I played basketball. I played football. I played tennis. I just loved playing sports.
I'm just laughing because this is one of those ways where just total opposites. Like you're the kind of person who's like, I loved running, fast twitch fibers. I was the kind of person where on athletics days, which I freaking hated in PE, we'd be at the starting line of 100 meter and I'd just be like trying to give it everything and I'd feel like I was going backwards watching people like you just pass me. Like it was the worst.
Oh, and that was one of my favorite things is to overtake people. I loved it.
You're the worst.
So I was obsessed with sport, and I think my build as a kid compared to now, I was just very, very skinny. You know, like, I mean...
Were you the awkward, lanky kid?
I was awkward. I was lanky. I mean, some of my primary school pictures are kind of cute. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, I've seen them. They're very cute.
They are cute, but kids are cruel. You know, I would get called, chicken bone legs.
Oh no, that's horrible.
I know.
Even though you were all that athletic and all that.
I wasn't athletic. I was. I played a lot of sports. I loved running, but my build was still skinny. I was a skinny kid.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I loved.
Okay. I just wondered
sports.
if this being good at sport protected you from that, but it sounds like you were good at those things.
Maybe in my later years in high school.
Okay.
Because I think it takes on new meaning being good at sports, because now you're winning for your form, or you're winning for your class. It's a bit different. I think the stakes are higher.
Yeah.
In high school, and so when it came to sports, I would always be picked in the first group of kids. I was always, if not the first, because I was an asset to the team, because I could run fast and I was just good at sports.
You are.
Do you know what I mean?
So annoying. Like my version of that was the picks
I sound
are coming.
like I'm bragging.
You do. I can feel like primary school and high school sports bravado like oozing out of you in this mega annoying way.
Yeah.
But I was like, I definitely wasn't the worst, only because I was surrounded by a family of athletes where I couldn't get away with not. So I had practice in my home life. That meant I was not going to be the last pick, but I was certainly in the second half.
Oh, okay. No, I was definitely in the first half.
You were in the first pick, not the first half. You're in the top
Sometimes
three.
I was first pick, but definitely in the first half.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So people definitely wanted me on their team because I was fast, because I was agile, because you know what I mean? I just adored being physical.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line,
Yeah.
right? But I was also really, really skinny. And so for me, there's like kind of two components to my understandings of my body and the experiences that I had with how the world interacts with and sees my body. And I think there was the cultural side of things and then the personal. And I guess between those, there's kind of like a capitalist side to it as well. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So culturally, I'm Nigerian. So I come from a Nigerian household, West African. One of the things, if you've looked on Instagram for any length of time and you've seen what is put out there about, Nigerian, West African specifically bodies, is that the women have
body, yaddy, yaddy.
They got body for days. They got the booty, they got the boobs, they got the waist, the
small waist.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's just that there's a certain
the African Stacey.
List. Yeah, it's the African.
There is an ideal type.
Yeah,
in the
there
African
is.
Context.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would the Nigerian version of a Stacey be called?
Bimbola.
Bimbola. Okay. So Bimbola archetype, big boobs, big ass.
No, why
tiny
am I giving her a Yoruba name?
Okay.
No, I want her to have an Edo name. Yeah,
okay.
She would be called Adesua.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to repeat that one.
Adesua. That's what her name would be. That is the black incel.
African archetype.
African woman archetype.
Yeah.
That they can't get hold, that they can't get.
Could have to ignore a whole lot of right wing.
Oh, a whole bunch. Yeah, just wipe that out. But yeah, so, culturally, that is the body that is
desirable.
Is desirable, right? And that is seen as the kind of woman that women want to be and men want to have.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then here comes me, skinny, basically a boy in a dress, built like a boy in a dress, essentially, which I think is quite cute, personally.
No, I do. Well, anyway, let me not say anything.
But I'm in this community, this culture that's like, looks at me as like, hopefully you're going to grow somebody at some point. We really hope and pray.
We hope you are going to turn into Adesua.
Adesua, that's what we are hoping for you.
Yeah.
And then I really remember one time at church coming down the steps and there was an auntie coming up and I walked past her and she just turned around and she just exclaimed, she was like, come and see skeleton.
Oh.
I'll never forget it.
Oh my God. That's awful. I'm sorry to laugh, but it's just that it's a universal truth that African aunties can be so savage.
Savage times 2. And I remember just, when you just kind of, you go a bit cold inside, like, because it's just like, because in that moment, it kind of knocks your confidence because you're kind
Yeah.
of just like doing your thing as a kid, going down the stairs, going about your duties. And then someone just hurls this thing at you that just cuts
awful.
you to your core.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, what, you know? So I was definitely getting the message that I was definitely too skinny. And it wasn't the body that was required, particularly as I got
ideal.
into my teenage years, because I stayed skinny.
Yes.
It wasn't like I grew into like boobs and ass. I didn't. I just stayed skinny. Do you know what I mean? So that was the messaging I was getting culturally.
So was it, you know, did it go well beyond that auntie? Did you feel like you were getting that elsewhere?
No, I think it was more observing.
Right.
Like
right.
I could
you're
see,
absorbing it in the culture. Yeah, totally.
I could see that the women who were admired and desired were the ones who had a certain shape and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then obviously I step out of that Nigerian community to go into the wider British world of my school and shops and, you know, outside of my home basically. And I'm getting a completely different message, particularly as I got older.
Yeah.
And the message I was getting from like white people and people that I would meet at school, teachers, that was, oh my God, you're so lucky. You're so skinny. You're like a gazelle.
Yeah.
You know, you're Amazonian, particularly as I got taller because
God, not
I know.
Amazonian.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
Lord. From who? Was that from
I'm not going to
black
mention any
peers
names.
or
That was white.
peers? Okay, I was going to say, I already knew that was a white person's comment because it's so
very,
racialized.
It's so racialized.
Yeah.
But that was happening as I got older. So now I'm like in my late teens and I'm tall now because I really came into my height like from my mid-teens to late teens. And then, you know, you're getting all these comments and people are just like envious of your body.
Yeah.
And they're like, and so like, I'm getting this like mixed message. On the one hand, you ain't got body. Like, why are you so flat? And then on the other hand, you're gorgeous. You're like tall and you're lean and you're like
everything that the like white magazines and culture were probably asking you for.
Because this is the era of like models, supermodels. The Naomi Campbells, the Kate Mosses, the people like that.
Yeah. Actresses.
And they are tall and very, very slim.
Yeah.
If not skinny, frankly.
Some were anorexic, and we had an extremely unhealthy fashion industry.
And that's the era of that as well, is like anorexia was a big thing. It just felt like so many film stars and models were anorexic.
Yeah.
And there'd be all these, you know, sensationalized news reports and magazine articles on so-and-so who had a lollipop head. Because that was the thing, that they would call it a lollipop
I know,
head.
my brother used to call me a pinhead.
Oh, God.
because,
no, but it
I
wasn't
had a small
about...
head and a skinny body
because
that era.
Because in that era, it was the fact that when they became skinny, their heads became bigger than their body. So it was like a lollipop.
In most cases, in my case, I became skinny and my head stayed small, particularly when I had braids and I didn't have this big hair.
Okay.
So my brother used to call me pinhead.
Oh, Jesus.
Because as a juxtaposition to lollipop head vibes that were the thing at that time.
This is it.
Yeah, it was wild.
So I'm getting these mixed messages. And then, of course, at home with my mum, she was just, all I remember in our cupboard was boxes of Slim Fast products. So Slim Fast was kind of the equivalent, I guess they were like the competitors to Weight Watchers.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
Exactly. And they had like these milkshakes.
Yep.
They had these chocolate bars, little bars. And my mum would obviously eat those because she was obviously trying to control her weight. I didn't fully understand it at the time, but I remember nibbling one of those Slim Fast chocolate bars and it was awful. It was like eating cardboard with a thin layer of plasticky cheap chocolate. And I was like, why is she eating this stuff? It's horrible.
I remember that taste so well.
It's awful, right? But it was, the brand was there.
Yeah.
And then there was Weight Watchers, there was Slim Fast, and then there was Special K. Now this is where this is where my resentment kicked in, because I was thinking to myself, we're going around the shops. I'm looking at how much the Special K costs. This is like a cereal that's for weight loss people.
Yeah.
Also
well, it was
tasted
marketed as
awful.
a weight loss thing, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
because it was like low in calories.
Eat it for dinner instead of a full meal and you will lose X amount of weight within 2 weeks. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Oh, God.
And anyway, you know, my kid eyes, I'm quite sharp on this. So we're going around the shops and I'm seeing the Special K box and I'm like, okay, it costs that much for Special K and you're buying it. But I'm asking you for Kellogg's Frosties so I can get the toy that's in the box and it costs the same amount, but you're not buying Kellogg's, but you're buying...
You can have your Special
But
K.
you're having your Special K. And I was like, I was not happy about that situation, because I didn't think it was right,
Yeah.
you know?
But I'm super curious because in so many episodes, we've talked about how religion protected you and your family from certain things in a way.
Yeah.
So we talked about it in an episode recently where we talked about Blind Boy and marketing to children.
Yes.
And, things like the toy and the Frosties being a thing that was happening. And I would have thought that maybe, I don't know, didn't the faith protect your mum from diet culture? It's really interesting that it was protective in all these other ways, but the Special K thing just crept through, and the Weight Watchers thing with no TV, none of that stuff, as you've talked about before.
Well, this is it. I don't know where she was getting that messaging. And I wonder if it was from wider society. I don't know what messaging she was getting. I don't know if it was men that she was talking to who were telling these things. I really have no idea because we had no TV. We had a radio, which we rarely listened to. We mostly just listened to sermons and Christian music. So I don't know where she was getting that messaging, but it was coming from somewhere.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit like you were saying about the African auntie. You only heard it explicitly once, but the message was in the culture everywhere. She would have been going past billboards, presumably advertising on buses, and that stuff was everywhere. Yeah, she worked in the houses of wealthy people.
Exactly, particularly white upper middle class people. She cleaned their houses. So yeah, I don't know where she was getting the messaging, but I imagine it was there because Slim Fast and Special K were a big part of my childhood growing up.
Yeah.
And it tasted rank.
I mean, ditto, but I was too bought into that culture to accept that it tasted rank. It's so interesting hearing you talk because I think so much of how we relate to our bodies and food comes from our mothers.
Yes.
And you are obviously this tall, quote unquote, Amazonian gazelle.
No.
But your mum, I mean, presumably you didn't need to be, as a slimmer build person, obsessed with Special K or Slim Fast in the way that I was as a teenager. But I'm curious about your mum. Like, why was she obsessed with it? What was her build?
Do you know, this is what is so confusing because when I look back at pictures of my mum, she's gorgeous. Her body shape is gorgeous. She's average height, average build. I always thought she was just drop dead gorgeous.
What does average
shapely.
height mean for you?
So like maybe 5'6"
Okay, so still in this ideal type, 5'6".
Yeah.
Built clothing size roughly?
12, 14.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe.
So just like gorgeous average woman.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is what I don't understand. And I was too young to really understand that it actually doesn't matter what your size is. Society puts pressure on women, regardless of what your body is, and makes you want to be something else. And the machine that fuels capitalism is pumping out products and messaging to tell you that you're not enough and you need to be better and you need to be like this person or that person, So I wonder if that's what she was responding to, because actually as a person, I think my mum's body was gorgeous.
Yeah. It's so
Or her
sad.
shape, the way she looked, and she dressed well as well.
Yeah.
Really good, fashion sense.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful that she was that, but it's so sad that she couldn't see that, or society didn't allow her space to see or celebrate that.
But do you know what's confusing with me about my mum is that she's also Nigerian, and I wonder why the cultural messaging, which is, big bum, big boobs, why she didn't abide by that as well. So I do wonder about that as well. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if her desire to do all this weight loss came about when she arrived in the UK, because remember, she arrived in the UK as an immigrant in her early 20s. So
that's super interesting. I feel like I have some similar questions about myself and my mum in that regard with how we saw our bodies, actually.
Okay.
Unresolved questions maybe, but I have some thoughts. One thing we haven't touched on,
Okay.
because we talked about your early life and we never really talked about your adult life, and you've definitely shared stuff with me about ways body shaming has shown up in your elder years. And the reason I thought about that is because I think it's so admirable to have that healthy attitude to your body as an adult.
Yes.
And I could easily listen to you and think it's because that stuff was left in your childhood and no other body shaming weird messages came after that. But I don't think that's true for you from stuff you've said before.
Absolutely not. I've been body shamed by 2 different partners.
Yeah.
And they were women. And I was shamed for, well, certainly in the case of one of them, for being skinny. And she basically told me, you know, I'm going to need you to put on some weight because this is not it.
Wow.
You know,
That's, I mean, like what age and stage would you have been for that?
early 30s.
Yeah. Did you hold that? Has it affected you?
I only held it in relation to her.
Okay.
It was really hard for me to get past that with her.
Yeah.
It was just, I just couldn't, because it really took me back to, you know, being called chicken bone legs on the school playground, skeleton by the auntie, and feeling like I wasn't enough for my culture, because my culture is, like I said, it values fuller figured women. And it cut straight to the heart of all of those things. And I wasn't able to get past that with her. There were other things that she did that I just wasn't about, which we can probably go into in another episode. And so I couldn't get past it with her. And so I ended that relationship.
And you never should have to. Like, body
Exactly.
shaming in a relationship is just an utter
Unacceptable.
no-no.
Yeah. And it's funny because as a slim person, you often can't talk about the issues that you face as a slim person, because people just kind of look at you and they're like, what have you got to worry about? What have you got to complain about? So there's almost a silencing component where I don't want to say the things. I don't want to make bigger bodied women feel away.
Yeah.
But then in so doing, I silence myself and the stories that I've experienced in that realm of body shaming.
Yeah. And fundamentally, we're all subject to the same thing, which is being shamed into one thing or another. That's, you know, nothing to do with you. It's about something else. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think it's amazing that you have managed to let that go, because I think I would struggle. And yeah, I mean, I think you look incredible, but more importantly, you're a person of amazing character. And I feel like we should focus on those things as well, you know?
Agreed. I think they should be the most important things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're loving what you're hearing, please don't just listen.
Hit the subscribe button, hit like, and please leave a comment so we know what you're enjoying.
Yeah, we really love having you on board, and thanks for being with us on Rigor and Flow. Back to the episode.
So tell me about your experiences growing up and how you understood your body and how your body was, I don't know, perceived or talked about or interacted with by the community that you grew up in.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would say I cannot remember a time in my life when I was not obsessed in some way with my weight and my body. I also don't remember when I first became aware of it. I have to say it must have been about 6, 7 that I became aware of my body, and probably roughly around that age that I started to think something needed to change about it, that it should be something other than it was. Yeah, there's a set of things that were happening in my life at the time that I suspect influenced it. And that's why I say I cannot remember a time when I wasn't obsessed.
Okay.
Which I think is so unhealthy. If I had a child that had that preoccupation with their body from that age, I would be so concerned.
Well, this is it. So it kind of makes you, anyway, we'll come on to that. But yes, I want to hold that thought.
Yeah, for sure. And
because it would have been apparent to your family that that's what was going on, right? At that young age, would you say?
I presume so. I mean, they did know that I was concerned about my weight.
Okay.
And sometimes they felt it was right that I was concerned about my weight, and they felt like I was eating too much. I have to say that I come from a family that are obsessed with bodies, weight, and health. I don't think they think they're obsessed. I think they think they're totally normal about it, but I personally think that they are.
In what ways?
Well, you know, some of it's perfectly fine and healthy. Like my brother's an athlete. Mm-hmm. You have to be, as a sports person, particularly in his sport, which is squash, you have to be agile, you have to move well. So, and your ability to perform will be influenced by what you're eating, right? So some of that's like totally understandable and proportionate. But then, you know, my dad's had various health issues along the way. and hereditary heart disease problems. And that's meant a focus on everything being right and eating well. My mum has diabetes. Okay. But long before she had diabetes diagnosed, she was just obsessed with, I always remember commentary on her body constantly.
From her or from other people?
From her.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like a self-commentary that just sort of leaked out everywhere.
Give me an example.
So my mum would often work late and come home, and sometimes on the way home, she would stop to pick up what we call marguinha, which is, or fat cake would be the English translation. Mm-hmm. It's like a donut without the sweet sugar or the jam inside that we would have with a local meat called sassoir, pounded meat. And if she brought it home, she would bring it in this polystyrene container. And when she'd open it, she'd almost eat it semi-secretly. And like with a guilt, there'd be this running commentary of like, oh, I shouldn't be eating this, going alongside it. Or the same thing with like, she liked Black Cat peanut butter was the brand we had at home.
Yeah.
And so she'd come home from work or sometimes from going to play squash herself, and then she'd put her peanut butter and her jam and she'd sort of eat that as if she was doing something wrong. Okay. So it wasn't always said, but it was there in all of her behaviors, I would say.
And you would be picking that up as a kid?
Yeah. And so I had like strong associations with food and guilt. That is not the only reason for my obsession. It was definitely in the culture because I think I didn't realize how influential my mum's magazines were until we started recording this podcast.
Your mum's magazines. What was the one?
There's two. Well, for this purpose, I want to talk about two of them. One was like a version of Women's Weekly or Slimming World. Also,
but these are British magazines.
Yeah.
And Women's Weekly is,
Yeah, they were.
And it made its
British.
way all the way to Botswana.
Oh, yeah. We were imbibing Western notions of body image in my household through magazines like this, which were probably imported for white women in South Africa and then made their way to the white expat community, being the large audience. And it was all the things you talked about, diet culture. Every page had, you must be on here's a 2-week diet plan. And then they had all these foods you just couldn't get in Botswana. On day 2, eat rye bread with avocado and cottage cheese. I'm like, rye bread, bitch, we only have that white processed bread. Where am I going to get rye bread? I didn't even know what it is. We don't have Google. So I was just like, rye bread. I'd stare at the magazines like, what is rye bread? And then I'd ask my dad, cottage cheese. I'd be like, oh, I know what cheese is. So I'd just substitute it for mature full-fat cheddar, thinking like, if I follow this diet plan, I'm going to arrive. You swapped a white womanhood fantasy.
So you swapped rye bread for white processed bread and cottage cheese for full-fat mature cheddar.
Don't expose me like this. Oh. Yeah, that was literally what I was trying to do.
Oh man.
And then avocado, that was easy. We had that. But yes, and then if you couldn't get avocado, maybe you'd have tomato. So you'd basically have a white cheese and tomato bread sandwich and you'd think you were on a diet. So that was definitely influencing my mother and therefore me. And honestly, my mum had every Slimmer's cookbook on the face of the earth.
Okay.
How to make soups to lose weight. It just never ended, right? To the point where I'd look at this and sometimes they'd say, if you want a snack, eat gherkins. I'd sit there eating a whole jar of pickles when I could have been eating sweets because, Slimmer's World and Women's Weekly said I needed to lose weight at the tender age of 7, So there was that. And then as a complete extreme, going back to the culture thing, we had the famous Drum magazine, the one I told you there's the agony arm that you write into. And that was an explicitly African edition marketed at Black women. Not even the slightest reference to diet culture. What you could find is, approach Baba this to help you with your erectile dysfunction or your cheating husband.
There's always one Baba.
There's always some witch doctor that needs to save you. Or, it had, to my recollection, zero diet culture whatsoever. Okay. So,
and that's interesting because they were both coming out, obviously the Women's Weekly is imported.
Yeah.
Drum magazine comes from within
South Africa, I believe. Yeah.
And yet they weren't sort of being influenced by Women's Weekly and maybe adopting some of those things and putting it in. They were purely for the local African women.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't remember any kind of diet culture in there.
Yeah. I actually, it's funny, I want to look at British magazines and see if our Black magazines have diet stuff in them.
That's a really good, like with the Voice newspaper, what did it have at the time?
So I don't remember the Voice having diet stuff in there.
I can't imagine.
Maybe recipes, but they're recipes to cook our foods.
Exactly.
Maybe, but not necessarily diet in that way.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I could be wrong. I mean, I used to read the Voice newspaper religiously. It was really my go-to.
Yeah. That's some unfinished business we should come back to. I also now want to go back and look at Drum, but to my recollection. Anyway, when my mum left the house, I wasn't looking for the diet stuff in Drum. I was looking for it in Women's Weekly, right? The other thing I remember about my mum and her weird mixed messages with food was she also used to play squash.
Okay.
And
was she any good?
Yeah, she was really good. She was Botswana's number one woman.
What? Yes, Ma Walker.
Yes, she was. In fact, my dad taught her squash, and then she started beating my dad, and my dad quit.
Girl power.
Yeah, exactly. Or fragile male ego. So then my mum taught my brother because she was like, well, I need someone to play with. And then he started beating her. But she carried on playing.
Yeah, and he became a world
number 11.
World number 11. That's not a joke.
Not a joke.
Yes, Alistair.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, because of that, our home life revolved around squash in spare time, playing squash. And one thing I remember was my mum would come and play, and there were very few women who played, and every single one of the other women that played, surprise, surprise, were white expat women.
Okay.
Now, these white expat women had entirely different body types to my mum. I would say my mum fit your mum's profile. She's 5'5", and she was probably around 12 to 14, maybe 16 at that stage. Bear in mind, clothes were made smaller then.
Yes. Yeah, that's something to talk about.
Yeah, because we've changed the standard. Mm-hmm. And after these women would come together to play league squash with my mom, they would all be in the changing room. And as a kid, you just go in and out of the changing room. And we had a very liberal African approach to that changing room. Everyone stripped off naked, showered in the same cubicles, got dressed and put their lotion and whatever. All the black people put their lotion, being my mum.
Oh, no.
And, it all happened in the open, and I'd come in and out freely, into that space. I always remember there being this constant commentary on bodies in the changing room where my mum would be like, oh, you have such a nice body. And how do you keep on top of your weight? And then Anne would be like, I don't know what Anne would say because I mostly remember my mum's response. But then I remember it would go, yes, but you have such a lovely bottom, Patricia. Okay, which is her English name. And my mum, yes, you're right. I do have a nice bottom, but otherwise I'm overweight. So I remember just being like, and then we would get out of the changing room in the car, and then matching that up to her guilt around eating the sandwiches, and then her being like, sometimes she'd be like, these white women, I wouldn't like to have a no bottom. It's very unfortunate. So she would both simultaneously have these women's weekly magazines, these slimming cookbooks, all of these things, which suggest she almost admired this white woman aesthetic, or at least was being taught to. And then on the flip side, she's in Africa where, in Bots, we have ass.
You've got ass for days.
The badonka donk is badonka donking, okay? And my mum would be like, I would hate to have no buttocks, no backside. So and she would almost pity them. And I was just like, what am I supposed to do with this? So is the ideal type, in fact, a mix of Stacey and Adesua, which is like, you must be slim as a board here and then have a giant buttocks and everything else must be slim. It was just so confusing,
Yeah.
It was wild.
Mad. Yeah, that's a bit of a... That's a bit of a head fuck.
It was a lot.
Especially when you're young and you haven't really got a filter for things like, what do I take in? What do I reject?
Yeah, so there was, I guess you were absorbing these things from the magazines, watching how your mum relates to food, all sorts of things. And I would say I intentionally haven't described my own body type like I asked you to describe yours because full disclosure, I am extremely body dysmorphic. I do not have an accurate picture of how my body is. I have quite a long history of eating disorders, which you're probably picking up even from the like stories I'm telling. I was dieting from as young as 6 and 7, self-imposed from reading those magazines. And so for me to even try to describe my body type, the way I've dealt with that in time is just to know I have strong feelings about my body, know that I can't trust how I view it, and mostly to try and ignore trying to categorize or describe it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. And from my perspective, I know it's probably not helpful, but for me, I just find your body beautiful.
It's very helpful, trust me.
Oh, okay. That's good. Because I know that sometimes people say, well, I don't need to hear that. But from my perspective, I just see all that you are as beautiful.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. It helps to have a partner that feels that way. When I first met you and we started dating, I was a little bit intimidated that you had what I perceived to be this excellent body. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? Am I going to struggle? It was a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was... But it very, very quickly disappeared, I think partly because you're so affirming and you're so open to a range of body types. But anyway, absent of my own ability to assess my body, what I can talk about is how other people responded to my body.
Okay.
So one thing I do know was that I definitely had puppy fat growing up. And I can even see that in old pictures, but probably in an age-appropriate way.
Yeah, of course.
That is why when I said I was on a diet at home, I don't think it got curbed, because I probably at one stage was eating too much because I would comfort eat as well.
Okay.
So I'd swing between diet, comfort eat.
Well, when you say comfort eating, I don't fully understand what that means. This is what I understand comfort eating is like you eat to self-soothe.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly what it is.
In traumatic moments, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that is so often the case with eating disorders, that they're often linked to traumatic things, including often childhood sexual abuse. And I would say my awareness of my body coincided with incidents around that.
Okay.
So that's why I say I don't remember a time, because I was very young, and I suspect there is obviously some overlap, without wanting to get into all the details of that experience.
Okay.
And I think I probably became more aware of my body at exactly that time. So that's why I say it's like I don't have a memory of being not aware of it. But, having that puppy fat, just like you found, kids in school can be mean, your peer group.
Very.
And so I do remember kids kind of saying I was tubby, but more importantly, adults in my life who are supposed to be caregivers, like squash coaches, people like that, constantly making jibes about my weight as well. So that was like a thing.
I remember you telling me a particularly harrowing story of an authority figure in the coach world who essentially shamed you in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to tell that story. I don't know if you remember the story I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do. I was a very easy target, because when I was on one of my mum's women's weekly diets, I would obviously come to training at the squash club with my own packed lunch, rather than eating what everyone did, with my little cheese sandwich.
Your cheese and tomato.
My healthy sandwich. And, that would also mark me out as different. On top of that, I wasn't really a willing participant in playing squash. I was a very reluctant player, mostly going because my brother went, and it was just the thing that was done in my family. So being the person who didn't love sport, a bit like puppy fat-ish, not enthusiastic about doing these millions of drills, I was already a target for little jibes while we were being put through incessant, like military style lunges and what you called ghosting, where you had to move around the court and, find the right form to hit a shot and all of this thing. But there was one particular day when I came with my cheese sandwich and sat outside the club where everyone was eating. And the coach was just making jokes about, oh, are you on another diet? Oh, are you on another diet? And there was a lot of this banter, a lot of boys there that were kind of ridiculing me. And then he goes, if you really want to lose weight, you know what you need to do is eat lemons. Yeah, it was very. There was
lemons.
Lemons, and that's the reaction I had. And he goes, yes, because the acid in the lemons will eat all your fat cells,
which doesn't even make sense.
0 sense.
And as a coach, you should know how the body works as well. Like it's like that's.
I think you believe he had good intentions in telling me that, and as it transpired, I don't think that's what it was about. We had a lemon tree at the squash club round the back. And so he said, yeah, all you need to do is eat 30 lemons a day. You can go and get one now. And if you do that, you'll start losing weight. So there's young me with all the peers sitting round.
Super impressionable.
I go and collect lemons from this tree and start eating them there and then. And as I'm eating them, and they're so sour, so of course you're sitting there like this as a kid, like your mouth is, that back of the jaw sourness that you get, and
I can feel it now.
You can feel it just thinking about it. You know that taste. And they're all there trying to look normal while I'm chewing through probably my third lemon.
How?
And then suddenly I'm noticing the shoulders jiggling and going up and down. And it's because him and all the young impressionable boys are laughing at me, knowing he's absolutely having me on, that these lemons are not going to make me lose weight. They just wanted to watch me consume them.
That is so cruel.
It's so cruel. And the worst thing about it was I had to stop anyway, because if you consume that much lemon, as I found out, you get a massive stomach ache. Now, when I think about that as an adult, I think, how cruel do you have to be? I left home at 11, which means I was under 11. I was probably 10 and under. And there's a peer group of young boys, impressionable, watching an older man do that.
Yeah. And
I think what they're learning about body shaming women, or about, preying on their vulnerabilities.
Yep.
It's kind of wild when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, it really is. And God, you were so young.
So young. If my daughter, if I found out someone did that to my daughter, I would, Mama Bear would come out. I would tear that guy a new one.
He would not like me if he did that to my kid.
Yeah.
So you came to the UK quite young to attend a private school in Middle England. How did things change after Botswana?
Well, before I ended up in Middle England, of course, I went to Northern Ireland, which I think is important because I got very different narratives in Northern Ireland versus when I came to this middle class school. In Northern Ireland, we were given loads of fast food and there were a lot more working class people. So I feel like there was a class dimension to this.
Yes.
When I moved from there to this posh school, the narrative felt very Women's Weekly compared to, you still had all that in Northern Ireland, don't get it twisted, but there was something about the canteen serves you this kind of fried food when you go to school, and that's what you're getting and that's what you're eating and that's what's affordable, right? Chips, fish, like fried fish, scampi, whatever, beige food. Then I go to this private school.
Well, not even a little salad or some peas or
peas,
some...
maybe you'd get some peas or some carrots.
Yeah, maybe beetroot.
It's the cheap frozen vegetables that you could have alongside those foods that you'd get.
Right.
Then you go to, I went to this private school and suddenly I realized it was so different. All my peers were, many of them were white and very, very slim, and they fit this aesthetic of Slimming World and Weight Watchers.
Okay, so you're now seeing it embodied.
I'm seeing it
it's
for real.
Off the magazine into the real world.
Yeah, whereas in Botswana, that had been a minority of expat kids of European descent people. There, it was
the norm.
The norm.
Right.
And suddenly money bought you access to good food. So when you went to the canteen, you had some fried food and you had some healthy hot food as well. That was, maybe not fried. And you also had a salad bar to choose from. And you were encouraged into every kind of sport, and everybody went around playing lacrosse. And,
lacrosse,
they were like gazelles. It was the white gazelles. It was your people.
So I needed to, basically I should have been in a private school in Middle England.
You would
and
have
I'd have fit right in.
excelled. You would have been the chief gazelle. But yeah, for me, I had already, in fact, I'd gone from being overweight in Northern Ireland and consuming a lot of fried food to the summer before I went to that private school, starting to heavily restrict and lose weight. And then I arrived in that space where it was actually possible to restrict and lose weight with salad bars.
So that's like adding fuel to the fire.
It really was. Particularly now I saw all these impressive, like white girls who were good at sport and good at everything. And that's how it seemed to me coming in from the outside. It felt like a lot of pressure. And I've always felt that there was something racialized about how the eating disorder I developed at that time and ended up in treatment for developed. And some part of it for me was, I think I was trying to be like those girls and good enough and fit in.
Okay.
And whatever happened, my young mind, already impressionable, already with problems with food, unconsciously latched onto that and tried to make myself fit in by conforming to that type, educationally, body-wise, everything, you know.
And what was there any response from the girls towards you? Did you receive any explicit messages from the girls towards you around your body? And
no, absolutely not. If anything, I would say my peers were concerned because I started to lose weight very quickly and quite dramatically, and it was very obvious I was restricting. What there was a safeguarding response from the school, because they weighed you every single term, right? To monitor your weight. Because when you go off to a school like that, they're responsible for everything, your health, your medical. Remember, you're living there. You're in boarding school.
Yes.
So every term they weigh you. You have medicals. There's a GP. Like there's a, what do you call it?
Like a matron.
It's more than that, because you actually have a GP, an actual GP on site in the health centre. I think they called it the health centre or something.
Okay.
It's attached to the school, because obviously in a school that size, you'll have kids who are sick all the time.
Yeah.
And if they live at the school, they need to have somewhere they can go where they're not going to pass their disease round, and where GPs give them prescription.
Yeah, yeah.
If I had to sum up my time definitely in that school in England, I just feel, apart from looking at my peers, there was just so much in the culture. That was the era of like Jennifer Aniston is the icon.
Yeah.
And, you know, Princess Di had passed, but she had been the previous icon and was still very much talked about. And I think she had bulimia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
You know, my friends' mums used to talk about people like Twiggy, you know, who were icons with a very particular aesthetic. It was often like blonde, slim build. The only one I really remember being slightly different was Angelina Jolie, who I had a massive crush on.
Yeah.
And was very kind of athletic, pitched as a bit of a, you know, like badass kind of. Yeah, she was still slim.
Yeah, because she played, who's that character from the game? Lara Croft.
Lara Croft. Yeah.
What I liked about her was she had full lips.
Exactly. And I remember that too. As an African person, you saw this white girl with that. I mean, you look back at it now and you think, imagine Angelina Jolie being the one that was not skinny.
I know.
It's actually wild.
I know.
But she did somehow embody some sort of more powerful aesthetic, rather than this kind of femme waif-like, almost fragile.
She was refreshing.
Prepubescent almost aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, she was definitely refreshing. That much I remember. I really liked her.
Yeah.
And Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, she was brilliant.
She was brilliant.
And I think the other thing, if I, you know, going back to your original question of moving between Botswana and the UK, in my young brain, the overall message I took away was, if you're rich in the West and you are everything you're supposed to desire, a celebrity or whatever, you're meant to be skinny, white, ideally blonde and blue-eyed.
That's the truth, though.
True.
That was the truth of that time.
Yeah. But the flip of it was, in Southern Africa, although my mum had this weird relationship, I think in the culture, it was almost like you're rich when you're bigger bodied because it means you can afford food, you have everything, you have resources.
That is the difference in beauty standards across cultures.
100%.
And when you straddle them, that's where you get into that utter confusion.
Yeah.
You know, because again, within, you know, when I think about Nigeria, I can only speak really about that. But I think more broadly in Africa, you know, people who do manual labor, who are in farms, working the land, tend to look like people who do a lot of manual labor.
Yeah.
They are lean, they are sinewy, they are slimmer build, they, you know, because they have a harder life.
Yeah, and a functional fitness that comes from
Lifting,
constantly doing
pulling,
labor.
hoeing.
Hoeing.
I'm talking about hoeing with the garden implement.
Okay,
hoe.
okay.
We're not out here in these streets. We're trying to survive and get food.
For real.
So, you know, these are people who are having to do all of this physical labor that obviously makes your body trim.
Yeah,
right?
for real.
And so those who don't have to do that manual labor and have money
and can employ people to do it for them.
They are the ones who are able to be what we would say as fat, you know, they're able to live a life of luxury where they don't have to run around farms, they don't have to plant and lift and pull, and they can afford richer foods as well. So rather than, you know, the more natural, like the yams and things like that, they
sorghum, the things that we would have,
cassava, that sort of thing. They might eat those as well, but they can also eat all of these other things like imported things, biscuits, cakes,
processed foods that are actually, frankly, not that great for you. Yeah.
And even in the cultural foods that they eat, because they've got money, they can have richer elements within the food.
Yep.
So
more oil,
red meat, and lots of it, you know.
And we know that this has led to a rise in health problems, incidentally.
Exactly.
This richness has an opposite effect. And it's interesting because I think for my mum, who faced so much food insecurity as a younger person, that I would love to know what that was like for her specifically to navigate that versus me, who didn't have that experience.
Yes.
I just find that wild. And I also always found it wild that this other piece of the Western thing, we imported so much black TV and content from America.
Yes.
And there was always this conversation about obesity in America. And in the African-American community, they were like us in Africa on the continent. They were bigger, but it was somehow, again, a working class thing because you're eating these highly processed foods.
Exactly.
Relative to...
that are cheap.
Yeah.
But actually, those foods in Africa are not cheap. They're expensive because they're imported. So it's actually a marker of you being able to afford those things.
Yeah. So it's really, like you say, very confusing messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then, you know, if you're skinny in the African context, it's like you're poor.
Yeah.
You are lacking in something. The resources are scarce in your world.
Yeah.
And if you're fat, you are wealthy and you have access to resources and access to other labor sources to do the work that you would ordinarily be doing, right? So you get the iconic African uncle with the big belly, and that's seen as he's a big man.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. He's an oga.
Oga. Yeah, exactly. I also think that there's a weird, I haven't thought this through enough, but thing around fertility and your body that happens in the African context.
Okay.
It's like you've got that big bum and that big hips and you're going to be highly fertile and produce me loads of children, which traditionally, like if I look at my mum's generation, when you're now having kids as a source of labor on the land, they pursued women who looked fertile in these particular ways.
Wide hips.
And those were signified by certain things, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know why I'm saying that particularly. I think it's another unfinished business thing that I need to go away and look at. But I feel like that was also a part of it.
Yeah, there's so much, isn't it, when we think about beauty standards, because some of it is culture and the things we've talked about, you know, media and all of that. And then there is another part, which is like biology and science and all of that. And I don't know how to get into those things because it feels like dangerous ground.
It's dangerous.
But I know that there are theories around what is desirable.
As an evolutionary perspective.
Precisely.
Yeah, and also a lot of them are bullshit because let's take you and I as example.
Mm-hmm.
I fit the mold of wider hips, all of those things relative to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when we went for a fertility appointment, you had the million golden eggs, right? And
But they couldn't
the
see
non-childbearing
yours.
hips.
No, but they couldn't see your ovaries and your eggs because of the fibroids. We actually haven't had a scan. Have we had a scan?
Well, they could see one ovary, and even the egg count for that was lower.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is some of these ideas which we say are biologically driven and determined and may well be aren't necessarily what's true.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. A lot of the things we've been talking about have been from the past. Coming to where we are now in the 21st century, where do you think we are today as a society?
I mean, honestly, to go back to what we said at the top of the episode, I am feeling quite confused about where we are because I think the levels of mixed messages we're getting are wild. I have really welcomed seeing a shift towards people being accepting of more like body diversity, more positive about how our bodies should be. I'm very happy we have things like clothes sizes that are more accurate and we're not, when you go into clothes shop these days, the mannequin that you see often looks much more like a real person.
There's so much diversity because you'll find slim models, mannequins, and you'll find fuller figured mannequins. I love it.
I love that. I mean, I don't know that I've seen like the fullest range, but I feel like it's definitely better than when we were growing up. Have you?
I have. I don't know what shop it was, but I've definitely seen a much fuller figured mannequin.
Yeah, okay. I think I've seen it maybe once
even
or
with
twice.
the men as well. Like there's a shop that's...
Is it North Face or one of the sports brands?
No, it's a shop that caters specifically to bigger men. So when I say bigger, it could be taller. It could also be more hench.
Okay.
And their models are like a good range of body types.
That's great.
In the mannequins.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm glad that it's filtering to all the genders.
Yeah, that's
honestly.
true. Yeah, that's really true. I definitely have friends and family who are plus size who are internally frustrated that, you can find plus size clothes, but it's not fashionable. It's almost as if you're in a bigger body, you suddenly don't deserve to like be interested in fashion or looking after yourself. I feel like there is some kind of messaging people are getting that if you're in a bigger body, you're not worthy of being into fashion or something like that.
I found the same thing, right? For a different reason.
Okay.
Which is the length of my legs.
Oh.
And I'm not trying to annoy anyone, but I honestly struggled to find jeans that were long enough for my legs.
Yeah.
Because
with your waist size.
It didn't really matter. You're just finding long-legged things is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And
I've seen it.
It's better now because now you do have tall ranges.
Yeah.
But when you would find it, it wouldn't be fashionable. It wouldn't be like the stuff that you'd find like in River Island or something like that,
Yeah.
So I'd end up having to... I remember I used to get my jeans from Long Tall Sally, which I don't even know if it exists anymore.
Long Tall Sally, I've never even heard of it.
That was the closest I could get to fashionable jeans that actually were my length.
Wow. Okay. I didn't even know about that, which shows like, I think there's these all sorts of interesting movement. Like obviously you've had things like the Kardashians come along and make the big bum the aesthetic.
Yes.
Even that is like kind of problematic because it still has to fit this other unrealistic ideal. But I guess it's part of some sort of shift. And honestly, as someone...
But the thing that my problem with the Kardashian thing is that when Black women who naturally have those body images or body types, it's kind of stigmatized, ridiculed, kind of like...
Sexualized. For years, we were just in hip-hop videos being sexualized.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then Kim Kardashian comes along and it's glorified.
Yeah.
And it's like she's doing something revolutionary. It's like, no, just go to Africa. There is nothing revolutionary about Kim Kardashian's body. Nothing.
It's so true. No, that's a real point. Like it goes back to this culture thing again. And why did she suddenly become the model of it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a mess. Like there's no simple answer to where we are. But one shift that I personally have started to find quite helpful is that body positivity movement that we saw on Instagram in recent years has been important. But I have seen now this call for body neutrality, which is accepting your body without focusing too much on like appearance, rather than love your body no matter what, and emphasizes function and how you feel around your body rather than an aesthetic or, you know, that kind of thing. Your body just is what it is, rather than being this thing you constantly have to speak to the aesthetic of. For me, I find that helpful because I'm so body dysmorphic that I would just feel like I'm lying to myself to do the body positivity thing.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like, do you remember when affirmations were a thing?
Yeah, it's like bypassing and like toxic positivity.
That, exactly. It was like positive affirmations. So I'm supposed to tell myself my life is great while I'm in poverty and struggling every day, and suddenly it's fine. It's like, I don't feel like that. So the best I can hope for is neutrality.
Yeah. And accepting where you are, even while you're heading to something, whatever that thing might be.
That thing for me is focusing on health. Like, I don't want my cholesterol to be high.
Yeah.
You know, we've recently taken on a trainer because I haven't felt good, largely because to do and write up my PhD, I was so sedentary.
Yeah.
All the time. That did not feel good to me.
Yeah, and that's a hallmark of PhDs. I've since discovered. I did not know the world of PhDs and how much it messes up your body.
It can mess people up if you don't have an active way of looking after yourself, or even if you do and you're trying. I just wasn't getting the exercise I was before. And, you know, whatever. I'm focusing on the health components of it. Partly also when you think about becoming a mother and having a baby, you think, what's my longevity? Will I be fit? And do I want to be fit going into a birthing situation if I were ever to do that?
Yeah, do you want to be able to run around with your kids? I know I do. I want to be able to have the energy to run around and play and all of that good stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Yeah.
What do you make of the world we're in? And more importantly, how do you feel about your body today?
I'm at peace with where I'm at, honestly. I think I like to think that I've settled into myself and my body. Fitness will always be a part of how I want to live my life because there's a functional component to it, which is that I just like being fit and healthy. I like being able to walk upstairs without running out of breath. I like being able to carry my heavy shopping bags, twisting, pulling, you know, hinging. I think those are really important movements and I like being able to do them without any discomfort. And if I'm going to live a long life, I want to live a healthy long life. I don't want to live a long life where I'm in pain or struggling with any other things. I know life can do whatever life is going to do. I fully get that. But the things I can do that are in my control to counteract that, I want to continue to do.
Yeah. Totally.
All right, that's it from us today. How are you feeling? That was quite a heavy one.
It was way more intense than I thought, but it makes sense. And I'm glad we've had the conversation, even if it's still stuff we're figuring out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I think it was important to tackle this very sensitive subject. I hope that we have done it justice.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to keep being us and being healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Ditto. So thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed what we're doing, please definitely subscribe.
And share with your friends because it really helps us to be seen and reach a wider audience. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Rigor and Flow.
Yeah, thank you. Catch you next time.